TRC. Would a Truth and Reconciliation Commission on xenophobia be a solution? How can South Africans ensure that xenophobic violence never happens again? What time is it? It's question time. Hello and welcome to the show. My name is Mpho Tsedu. Former Truth and Reconciliation Commission Chairman, Archbishop Emeritus Desmond Tutu, has joined those who have vehemently condemned xenophobic attacks that have so far claimed 7 lives, recalling the cries of those who testified during the TRC hearings he presided over. Yet, here we are, less than a generation later, witnessing hate crimes on par with the worst that apartheid could offer. Archbishop Tutu said South Africa and indeed the whole of Africa have united to ensure in various ways that xenophobic violence never happens again. A reminder that this is a live program. Therefore, you can call us and air your views. 011-714-6841, 6842 or 6843. My guests, Marjorie Jobson, National Director at Khulumani Support Group, and Catherine Kennedy, she's the director at the South African History Archive. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you.
Khulumani Support Group. When we talk Khulumani, we're talking obviously redressing the past injustices. Yet at the moment, we're faced with another form of injustice. What do you say?
Paul, yes, tragically we're seeing things happen again that we believed that we had reached a stage where they would never recur. And I think there's a lot of things that we can unpack about this. And you know, as people who were formed around the time of the TRC, one of the things that remains a concern to us is that the TRC did not deal very successfully with prosecutions, that there was a large-scale impunity, that people had developed habits of winning through violence. We haven't changed those practices. We have millions of people who are living in the most deprived circumstances. So the promise of freedom and the promise of repairing communities, rehabilitating communities, reharmonizing the relationships within communities is very much a job that is not yet finished. And the people, the members of Khulumani, live in those communities. So it's a situation of real inhumanity and degradation that we haven't transformed. People are looking forward to the 60th anniversary of the Freedom Charter this year, but we haven't given substance to those articles of the Freedom Charter. And so I think critically the criticism we have of the TRC is that we didn't change the structures that have resulted in actually worsening the inequality and the injustice. And there are lots of things that we believe are possible. Perhaps we can talk about them in the course of the program. We are very much at a crossroads. The student movements are in rage. Mainly at white supremacy, the lack of curricula at universities that are teaching proud African intellectual histories. I think we're at a very important point in our country, and I think we now have a moment to start changing direction and doing the things that we didn't manage to achieve with the Truth Commission.
Is there something that we could learn from our archives in order to deal with this tragedy?
Absolutely. I mean, I think at the core of it, the Truth Commission was an investigation. It was trying to put together as complete a picture as possible of the nature of gross human rights violations between 1960 and 1994. And the idea was that that would then enable us to use that information to forward the reconciliation agenda. As an organization, the South African History Archive is very interested, committed to the idea of how archives can support struggles for justice. And arguably, the work that the TRC uncovered is central to our understanding of struggles for justice today. So it is, I think the archive can tell us a lot. Remember, the Truth Commission was also only ever intended to be a starting point for these kinds of discussions. And the kinds of actions that they recommended that the government take forward would be supported by that research that they put together. So until the archive is made available, it's very difficult for us to look at how to take those recommendations forward.
Would it be important to have a Truth and Reconciliation Commission on xenophobia? Is it something that is necessary or what?
Personally, I don't think that would be the direction I would go in. First, I think we need to reevaluate the Truth Commission we've already had, look at the recommendations that were made then, and look at what work we still need to be doing based on that commission. That was a resource commission. Do we really need to go back to that kind of mechanism, or is it that we need to be, as a country, pushing for the governments to actually move forward around those reparations, move forward on things like prosecutions to challenge the cultures of impunity that Marge has referenced. Look at the reparations. I mean, what we're seeing here is enormous poverty and the failure of the Truth Commission to address the poverty. And so if we were actually went back and looked at how big business was let off the hook in the first Truth Commission, and maybe followed up on the recommendations about how big business can actually be made to contribute to reparations, that I think would be a more valuable step forward than starting a whole new Truth Commission process. But I think there's a definite relationship between the failure to follow up on the recommendations of the Truth Commission by our current government and the kinds of frustration, rage that we're seeing playing out in the streets today.
Yes.
I agree with Catherine in terms of the fact that the recommendations of the Truth Commission were exceptional and we have not implemented them. They were watered down and they have not been honoured, they weren't embraced. And I think a lot of the anger and the frustration and the disadvantage and the lack of progress that people have made in their lives can be traced back to that fact. So people often talk about we need a TRC part 2. We're not saying we need a new TRC, but we definitely need an ongoing process. We have incredible resources in this country. We ran a very, very interesting community-based process using former military veterans, military combatants who lived in other African countries and who became the key generators of different kinds of conversations in communities, in taxis, in churches, in their own homes. And we discovered there's so much work to be done around the fact that apartheid humiliated people. We haven't overcome the humiliation. We haven't honoured it. We haven't transformed the fact that people still feel as disempowered as they did under apartheid. Okay. So those kinds of things, there's so many resources to do that work. It's not work that's going to happen if you make announcements in a stadium. Those are important, but it's on the ground work that needs to happen.
Okay, hold the thought there. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we'll be taking your calls.
Scoop on what really happens at the SABC, straight from us. Read our cover story to experience the world through the eyes of Bonang Mateba. Get to know the fresh faces of our new primetime telenovela Uzalo, and join in the 50th birthday celebrations of Mungana Lonene FM and Palapala FM, all in the latest issue of Evoke magazine. Don't miss out. Get yours at sabcevoke.co.za or download the app and stand a chance of winning a double ticket to the 2015 Belgian Grand Prix.
Welcome back. You're still watching Question Time. My guest today, Marjorie Jobson, is the National Director at Kulumani Support Group, and Catherine Kennedy is the Director at the South African History Archive. We have a caller from Cape Town. Dina?
Hello, Mpo.
Yes, Dennis, welcome.
Yes, good day, Mpo.
Yes.
I always listen to your shows, and it's quite encouraging, and we really appreciate it. Mpo, my contribution is what I really think is there is a challenge in South Africa. Though the foreigners, they must also appreciate that in South Africa, this is a big country, Mpo,
Yes.
and foreigners are really everywhere.
Mm.
I am also a foreign national, and we do really appreciate that we have been in South Africa since 2003.
Mm.
And I would like to believe that the socio-economic problems which are now being seen today is also because there is challenges where all the people who came, we also need the same loaf of bread which the South Africans also need.
Yes.
So there is need to have dialogue really on the ground.
Yes.
So that at least we really share the same resources. But the only thing which maybe the media also needs to really encourage is to be self-dependent, where we really know that in South Africa, people really relied more on government, but government is a big body. Mm-hmm. It's not possible really to get a grasp of the same loaf of bread if you are waiting for the same father to provide.
Yes.
So the foreigners, they do understand that we don't have any finance where we get it. We have to make it on our own so that we get the small businesses to really generate on their own.
Okay.
So I think that is the message I want to pass on. People need to really be self-motivated, and if you see someone next door doing something, appreciate it, ask him how did you come up to that, and you will see some of these businesses, they start from 1,000 rand, at the end, in a year, 2 years' time, is having a 10,000 rand. So it's all about savings, and it will come right.
Okay. Thanks very much, Dennis. I think it's quite an important call. But one of the points that I've always asked is around history. Do South Africans know their history fully? You know, to a point where they would appreciate the role that was played by other African countries in ensuring that today, somebody like myself, I'm sitting here comfortably and knowing that I have to do a job without anybody really putting a gun on my head to tell me what to say.
No, I don't think we do. I don't think we appreciate our recent history and the contributions that our neighbors made to where we are as a country, as a democratic country after 1994. And I think perhaps that would be a great place to start. If we look at the enormous hospitality that was shown to the liberation struggles in exile, that and the extent to which we need to reciprocate with that kind of hospitality, and how jarring that is when one considers what's happening.
Magic, you're calling us from Free State?
Yes, sir. The point that I want to make is the problem that we have here is as a result of borders. I want to say that a border is simply an artificial creation of colonialization.
Yes.
This borders has been there in such a way that, for example, when you see an African person, you first see the country where he's from instead of seeing him as an African first. And the black consciousness of Steve Biko has been downplayed as a result of political affiliation. And that of African Renaissance of Thabo Mbeki has also been downplayed because of invisible camps within the ANC. That's the story that I want to tell.
But shouldn't those two that you have outlined, Magic, you still with us?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Shouldn't the black consciousness and the African Renaissance philosophies that you're talking about be something that should be owned by the people themselves? If Biko says black consciousness is a way of life, it shouldn't depend on an organization to really spread that message.
Yes, that's correct. But you see, people that we see them playing a role as our leaders are not there altogether. Every time they are reactive in terms of being proactive. But you are correct, I agree with you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, Magic. Let's look at, perhaps if we just take the discussion further on. the reparations and all that which you want government to do.
Yeah.
How far are you?
Paul, we have had 10 years of trying to inform the policies of the Department of Justice. There are very, very interesting ways in which reparations can be done. Unusually, there is quite a large fund that's available, which we think should be dedicated to specific community rehabilitation programs that are investing in communities, investing in the human capital of the people who were at the forefront of the struggle and who got very severely harmed, rather than continuing what the present ideas and thinking of the Department of Justice is that they will give the money to certain municipalities to build a community centre in memory of victims. Well, victims and survivors are very much alive, and they have many, many plans. They have no access to resources. This challenge of resources for foreign nationals and survivors of the struggle is the same struggle.
Okay. Hold the thought there. Mzwake is in East London.
Yes.
Go ahead, Mzwake.
Thank you for taking my call.
You're welcome.
I see this thing of xenophobia that we're talking about here in South Africa. But I want us to consider, what do we think is the causation of this thing, of this xenophobia? Because you look at these people where they are attacking. They are attacking people who have got small shops. They chase them out and then they take their food. So what leads this to this thing of this attack? I think it's starvation and poverty that has been neglected by our government for a long time. Now these are the end results. Because all those guys that are standing, that have got stands, that are selling shoes, belts and skins, they are not being attacked. But all those that have got small shops are being attacked.
Okay.
And now to look at this thing of xenophobia, to me, it looks as if we've taken it out, too much. Because we have got these foreigners that are here, that are selling shoes and all the other stuff, they're not being attacked. But those they've got small shops, where you have got Emily meals, you have got your eggs, you have got your fish oils, they are being attacked. So I would like us, before we go any further, we consider the causation of these people.
All right, thanks very much, Mzwake. That was Mzwake. We're going to take a quick break. When we return, we'll continue taking your calls and wrap up the program. This is Question Time.
Information-hungry viewers stay with SABC News, as issues on the West are different from issues on the East or here in Johannesburg. So it is not surprising that people who follow the news know that there are two things for sure: that anything can happen, and SABC News will tell you when it does. Because we keep the nation fully informed. We are SABC News.
Welcome back. You're still watching Question Time. My guest, Marjorie Jobson, National Director at Khulumani Support Group, and Catherine Kennedy, she's the Director at the South African History Archive. However, we've got Temba in Benoni. Temba, welcome.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, how are you?
I'm doing very well. Thanks for asking.
I'm fine. Thank you for having me. Yeah. I think, I blame this whole thing of xenophobia on the government. Basically, if you look at this thing, it's actually the poor from the other African part of Africa fighting against the poor in this side of the continent. So the reality is that the government knowingly neglected or ignored, the tension that has been going on the ground. And I think the government needs to go, instead of reinforcing militarily, I think they should go to the communities and approach, as they've acknowledged that they've never had a plan of how they were going to bring these people, the foreigners in our country, which is why those people had to suffer the onslaught of a wrong governance. I blame it on the governance. Thank you.
Okay. Thanks very much, Temba. There, very, very clear. Let us perhaps wrap up the program. Section 29, hearing transcript of the TRC. There seems to be some interesting stories that have never been heard there. What are those?
Basically, the Section 29 transcripts or the hearings were secret investigations or inquiries that were undertaken by the TRC at the time. And it was an investigative tool given to the TRC to really delve into those very difficult, controversial elements of our past, because it was viewed that because the TRC was taking place so soon after 94, that maybe the country was a little bit unstable. We've just, after an 11-year battle, received the majority of the transcripts from the Department of Justice in terms of the Promotion of Access to Information Act. And while unfortunately we're a small organization, so we haven't had a chance to read them in any great depth yet, it does cover things like Vlakplaas. It covers a lot of the high-profile assassinations. It covers the workings of the security branch. So a lot of stuff that we just haven't seen before.
All right. Biza, you're calling us from Cape Town.
Yes, and thank you for the opportunity to you, man.
You're welcome.
I am so grateful. You see, I just want to take a different dimension on this thing. Because why this thing of the SANDF being launched in Alexandria now, our people right across the country has been suffering from this type of violence for a long time now already. If you look at the Cape Flats and you look at the Menenbergs and you look at the areas here, we've been suffering from gangsterism and people have been killed and so on. Nothing has been done and people has been getting away with this thing. So I want to appeal to the government, man, that I will never condone this thing of xenophobia, because we are all Africans, but our lives in South Africa less important when our brothers and sisters are being killed every day in the streets.
All right, Biza, quickly, Biza, would you prefer to have the army in the Cape Flats, for instance?
But I'm talking about relevant reaction to the people who are being killed in South Africa every day. We are also Africans, my brother. So please, man, the government must do something against this lawlessness and things of, breaking into people's houses and hijacking and all these type of things.
Okay. Thank you very much, Biza. Let me give you both 30 seconds each here. Your message to South Africans and Africans watching Question Time.
I think we have a new opportunity to build a very inclusive citizenship with much better economic policies that are investing in communities. Communities know the solutions, but they are not taken seriously at this stage by government. And we see that as a very, very problematic thing, that decisions are made, the army is sent in. Did the community request that? I heard Biza say they probably want the army and the Cape Flats. The big problem is I think people have lost faith in the police, and certainly the people we've been working with in Isipingo and in Durban Central said that the police were only there when the cameras were there. They weren't there at night when people needed protection. And so I think there are these issues around the trust in the police that has to be reclaimed.
Okay. A quick one from you.
I think this is a call for us to all look at ourselves and what we're doing. I think we've become complacent as a nation, and the fact that we all need to be holding our government to account. This is our government. And if we want to avoid if we want to pursue this language of never again, which was what the TRC was about, the never again, why are we back at 2008 again? Then we all need to be taking responsibility for how we can contribute to that.
Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you.
That was question time for today. A big thank you to our guest and to you for watching the show. We welcome your feedback via email. questiontime@sabc.co.za, or you can tweet us. Our Twitter handle is @questiontime24. You can also follow me on Twitter @Mpho. From me and the rest of the crew, have yourself a wonderful time. Goodbye.
In Africa, mobile devices are tools to make payments, browse the internet, and keep governments in check with social media forums.
It's given an average African too much power in their hands.
And tech creativity is solving some of the continent's problems.
Everything is internet driven.
And on Network, we tell you how Africans are using technology and social media in their everyday lives.
Join Siphumelele Zondi on Network every Sunday at 19:30 CAT.
For the farmer, fire sometimes epitomizes a new beginning, purifying and cleansing the ravages of winter. With the help of the Children of Fire, Mita is now a social worker manager and helping other survivors to unleash their potential.